The clock on the antique mantelpiece struck midnight as Emily stood in front of the old mahogany door. It had been years since she last visited the quaint bookshop tucked in an obscure corner of the city. Her fingers lightly brushed against the intricate carvings on the door before pushing it open. A tiny bell chimed, announcing her presence. No one seemed to be there. The space was empty except for the towering shelves filled with endless titles. She took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of aged paper and polished wood. The aroma transported her back to the days when she was an avid reader, lost in tales of romance and adventure. Emily wandered down narrow aisles, her fingertips gliding over the spines of forgotten classics. The dim light from antique chandeliers seemed to whisper the secrets hidden within the books, beckoning her closer. Eventually, she found herself standing in front of the poetry section. The worn-out leather-bound volume that once belonged to her caught her eye immediately. As Emily opened the book, a folded piece of paper slipped from between the pages and gently floated onto the floor. She picked it up and unfolded it carefully, realizing it was a handwritten letter. The words inked on the paper were addressed to her, penned by an old flame. She couldn't help but read the long-lost love letter, each word pulling at her heartstrings. "Dear Emily," the letter began, "you have always been the poem I never knew how to write, and yet you were the story that I have been writing in my head since the day we met." The nostalgia overwhelmed her, making her eyes misty. It was as if the walls of the bookstore dissolved, and she was transported back to the past. She could see herself and her old love meeting secretly in this very place. Despite the melancholy that enveloped her, Emily felt an inexplicable sense of comfort, as if reading that letter had temporarily lifted the weight of years off her shoulders. Closing the book, she put the letter back in its place and returned the volume to the shelf. She couldn't rewrite the past, but somehow the letter made her feel like she had closed a chapter that had been left open for too long. Emily walked out of the poetry aisle, feeling a curious mix of melancholy and peace. She made her way towards the exit, the bell chiming softly as she left. Outside, the moon was hanging low, casting ethereal light on the cobblestone streets. The city seemed to be asleep, but Emily felt more awake and alive than she had in years. As she walked back home, she noticed that the surroundings were enveloped in a calming silence, broken only by the distant sound of a nightingale singing a lullaby of forgotten love. Emily felt the corners of her mouth lifting into a smile, as if some invisible force was reminding her that sometimes love stories don't need a clear ending to be beautiful. She reached her doorstep and paused, taking one last look at the moon before entering her home. As she closed the door behind her, a warm feeling enveloped her, as if the walls were giving her a gentle embrace. Emily climbed the stairs, her feet feeling surprisingly light. Each step seemed to elevate her higher, not just physically, but emotionally too. In her bedroom, she prepared herself for bed, the events of the night still lingering in her mind. As she climbed under the covers, the fabric felt like a soft cocoon, inviting her into a world of dreams. She turned off the bedside lamp, plunging the room into a peaceful darkness. The only light now was the glow of the moon seeping through the curtains, casting silvery patterns on the walls. As Emily closed her eyes, she felt a surreal connection with her younger self, the one who used to get lost in stories and believed in the power of love. And in that moment, as sleep began to take over, Emily felt grateful for the forgotten love letter, for the nostalgia it evoked, and for the peace it had brought her tonight. Her breathing became steady, each inhalation and exhalation syncing with the rhythm of her heart. As she drifted closer to the realm of dreams, she sensed that tonight, those dreams would be sweet and comforting, full of faces and places from a past she had learned to treasure. With a sigh, Emily finally gave in to the embrace of sleep, and as she did, her mind composed its own silent lullaby of forgotten love, a melody that accompanied her into the land of dreams. In this dreamy landscape, she met her younger self and her old flame, and for a brief, magical moment, they danced under a starry sky, celebrating love that once was. And so, cocooned in warmth and comfort, Emily slept peacefully, her heart light and her spirit calm. Outside, the nightingale continued its lullaby, as if serenading her into deeper slumber. The world outside was still and silent, yet it felt like everything was exactly as it should be. The clock on her bedside table ticked softly, marking the passage of time. But for Emily, time stood still in the most beautiful way. And as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the horizon, Emily remained in her world of dreams, holding on to the love and memories that time could never erase.